first of all the video of the mechanism of breathing for you guys, okay?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is lecture number 4 of the breathing and respiration chapter, and in this lecture we're going to talk about how the mechanical processes of respiration takes place, or how breathing takes place, how we inhale and how we exhale. For that purpose, we'll quickly revise the structure or the anatomy of the breathing system, and we'll also learn about the anatomy of the intercostal muscles. Then it will become easier for us to understand this whole process. Now, quickly, just a revision or go through. Of the breathing system. I will not draw the whole breathing system. I will just draw the important structures which are required to learn about them during this whole process. Now, in this, we need to know about that there is this nose, this is mouth, this is larynx. We have learned in detail about this lecture before. Here we have the epiglottis, this is trachea, this is bronchus, plural is called as bronchi. Then this is lung, and this is called as diaphragm. Now this was about the breathing system. Now let's learn about the intercostal muscles. The question is, what are intercostal muscles? Now, if you see that in the middle of your chest there is a bone. Now this bone which is present in the middle of our chest, this bone is called as sternum. Now with this sternum there are bones present which are present from the front, and they're going to the back as well. I will draw only a few of them. There are 12 pairs of these bones, and these bones are called as ribs. We are not going into detail of the ribs in this topic. The more detail that will come in A levels. And these bones, they are called as ribs. Now, in between these ribs over here, there are muscles present, and these muscles are called as intercostal muscles. Now over here there are two types of intercostal muscles. One type of intercostal muscles are called as external intercostal muscles, and the other ones are called as internal intercostal muscles. Now with the help of blue color, I am going to show the internal intercostal muscles. Now they are present lower to the external intercostal muscles. So these blue lines, they are representing the internal intercostal muscles. Let me label that. These are internal intercostal muscles. Then above these Here are, I'm showing them with the red color. These are the external intercostal muscles. Both of these muscles, they play a very important role in breathing in and breathing out. Now, let me show that this red colored muscle, let me label over here, these are external intercostal muscles. So remember one thing, that intercostal muscles are the muscles which are present in between the ribs. Let me write over here, intercostal. There are actually 3 types of intercostal muscles, but according to your syllabus, we'll just discuss the 2 of them. So these are the muscles present in between the ribs. Now, one more universal rule which I need to tell you, and which you already know before as well, that when one muscle contract, other muscle always relax, and muscles always work in pairs. Now, in this pair, there is the internal intercostal muscle and external intercostal muscles. There is a very simple example of the pair of muscles which work together, and that example is your bicep and tricep. Now remember one thing, whenever your bicep muscle contracts, at that time your tricep muscle is relaxing. And when your tricep muscle is contracting, at that time your bicep muscle is relaxing. So when the tricep contract, bicep relax, and when bicep contract, tricep relax. So it means that they are always working together. When one muscle is contracting, the other is always relaxing. Now, let's learn that how inhaling and exhaling process takes place. Now, remember one thing, it is not difficult to learn about exhaling and inhaling because both of these processes, they are opposite to each other. Now, we'll learn about both of them on the same sheet. So on this side, suppose we talk about inhaling. And on this side, we'll talk about exhaling. Now, remember one thing, that naturally the diaphragm is a dome-shaped structure. Now, I'm just drawing a small diagram for your understanding. Naturally, the diaphragm, it is a dome-shaped structure. Let me mention over here that this is diaphragm, and it is in dome shape. Now, first step, what happens, that the muscles of the diaphragm, they contract, and the diaphragm, it becomes straight. Now I can show this in the form of a diagram over here. For that purpose, let me again draw a small diagram, this. So what has happened actually over here, that the diaphragm is now straight. Let me write over here. So what happened actually over here, that the muscles of diaphragm contract and diaphragm became straight. Now in this diagram you can easily see that the diaphragm is touching the lungs, but now you can see that there is gap between the lungs and the diaphragm. Now this is the first term. Now remember one thing, when we are inhaling and exhaling, all these steps are taking place at the same time, but for your understanding I am explaining them separately. In next step what happens, that the external intercostal muscles contract and internal intercostal muscles relax. Again, I explained this, that always the muscles to each other and they work in pairs. In this pair, at this time when we are inhaling, external intercostal muscles are contracting and internal intercostal muscles, they relax. So when the external intercostal muscle contract and the internal intercostal muscles relax, at that time the rib cage is pulled outward and upward. Now we can quickly perform an exercise. All of you can put your hand onto the top of your chest and inhale deeply. When you inhale deeply, you can feel that your rib cage is going outward and upward. It is moving outward and upward. So when the rib cage, it will move outward and upward. We can show it like, you see, like this way and this way, that this is outward and upward. So what will happen? That there will be gap between the lungs and the rib cage cavity, and there is gap between the lungs and the diaphragm. Now because of this, what will happen? Something very, very interesting, that inside the lungs the air pressure will decrease. Now you have learned in physics, air always moves from higher pressure to the lower pressure. So as inside the lungs the air pressure is less, but around us the air pressure is higher. So what will happen? The air rushes inward. And when the air rushes inward, at that time our lungs inflate like a balloon. This is very, very important. So all of these steps, they happen at the same time, and then we inhale. The diaphragm contract and become straight. These external intercostal muscles contract and internal relax, and the rib cage is pulled outward and upward, and because of that the air pressure inside the lungs decrease, so the air rushes inward. Now the inhaling process is complete. Next is the exhaling process. Now remember that diaphragm became straight. Now the exhaling has to take place. Now I told you guys in the last to last lecture that our lungs cannot contract and relax. They can only inflate and deflate. Now the pressure must be applied onto the lungs so that the air can move out. So the first step, what happens, that in this step The diaphragm which was straight, now this diaphragm, it relaxes. The muscles of the diaphragm relax and the diaphragm comes back to its original dome-shaped position. And I can show you again with the help of a small diagram which I can draw over here. Now, what has happened? That the diaphragm is again in dome shape. So we can mention over here simply that the muscles of diaphragm relax and diaphragm comes back to its original dome shape position. Now, at the same time, the next step will take place, and that next step is that the internal intercostal muscles will contract. Now, it is totally opposite to the inhaling. Now, this time, the internal intercostal muscles, they will contract and external intercostal muscles will relax. Now, according to the rule, when one muscle contract, the other one relax. So this time the internal intercostal muscle has contracted and the external one has relaxed. So in this case, what will happen? The rib cage will be pulled downward and inward. Now again, we can perform an exercise. Inhale deeply first. Now exhale deeply. You can feel that your rib cage is going downward and inward. So when the rib cage will move downward and inward, the diaphragm will come back to its dome-shaped position. Both diaphragm and rib cage, they will apply pressure onto the lungs and the air will rush outward. So let me mention over here that rib cage and diaphragm apply pressure on lungs, and what happens? That the air rushes outward. And when the air rushes outward, so what is the last step we talk about? That the lungs deflate. So this is how what happens, that the inhaling and exhaling processes take place. Thank you very much. We'll continue with the next lecture. Goodbye. Allah Hafiz.
So guys, you guys have to memorize all these steps. All right?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, if a person gets a cut on the skin, suppose that there is this cut in the skin. When there will be cut in the skin, most definitely the blood vessels, they will also be get cut. When the blood vessels, they will cut, It's obvious, just like a pipe when it is being broken, the liquid in it starts flowing out, the blood will start coming out and the bleeding will start. So over here, this is representing a cut in the skin. These are broken blood vessels. And this is the bleeding part of the blood. Now, there are different, you see, harmful effects of a cut on the body. One harmful effect is that is the person keep on bleeding if this cut is not healed, if it is not plugged, this cut, if it is not closed, then the person can bleed to death. One. Second, that this has become an opening in the skin through which the germs and pathogens can enter. So this blood, you see this cut must be blocked, it must be plugged, it must be clotted. For that purpose, there are different physiological and chemical reactions that take place which help in making a blood clot. Now, it's a complicated process, but we only discuss the processes happening which are related to your grade, that is O levels. Now, what happens that in next step, when this blood, it is coming out and this blood comes in contact with the air, now you guys have learned in the last lecture which I gave you that in the blood there is blood plasma. Now,
Okay, boys. We'll continue inshallah in the next class. See you guys inshallah in next class. Take care and Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz, sir.
Allah Hafiz.